The morning sun had barely risen over the city skyline when a luxury black sedan rolled through the gates of one of the country's most powerful corporations. No one noticed the tired man behind the wheel except for the little girl in the back seat of an old bicycle he had parked outside the security fence just moments earlier. She waved with a smile that hid years of hardship, while he forced himself to smile back before stepping into a world where nobody knew his story. By sunset, the entire company would be shaken by a truth that no one had imagined. The quiet single father hired as the CEO's personal driver was not just another employee struggling to survive. He was the true owner of the company, and the people judging him had no idea they were about to witness a lesson that money could never buy. Before we begin this unforgettable journey, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who believes in kindness and second chances, and subscribe to the Hard-Working Dad channel. Every act of support helps us bring more emotional stories that remind us hope can appear when we least expect it. Every morning, Kieran Holt woke before dawn in a tiny rented apartment that overlooked a noisy train station. The apartment was barely large enough for 2 people, but it held everything that mattered to him. A small kitchen, a worn sofa that became his bed every night, and a colorful corner filled with toys and schoolbooks belonging to his 8-year-old daughter, Maris. Since losing his wife to a sudden illness 3 years earlier, every responsibility had fallen onto his shoulders. He became father, mother, teacher, cook, and protector. There were nights when he skipped dinner so Maris could have enough to eat, mornings when he walked miles because he could not afford fuel, and endless afternoons spent searching for jobs that always seemed to disappear before he arrived. Despite every hardship, Kieran refused to let bitterness enter his heart. He taught his daughter that dignity was something nobody could take away unless you surrendered it yourself. Even when life became painfully unfair, he believed that honest work still carried value. That belief led him to accept a position many people considered insignificant. He became the personal driver for the newly appointed CEO of the massive Holt Global Industries, a company admired around the world for its innovation and success. Ironically, he never told anyone that the company carried his own family name. The new CEO, Celeste Rowan, was admired for her intelligence, discipline, and fearless leadership. At only 38 years old, she had climbed through impossible challenges to earn her position. She believed in efficiency, results, and professionalism above everything else. When she first met Kieran, she saw only a quiet man with polished manners and remarkable punctuality. His clothes were simple, his shoes showed signs of years of careful repair, and his eyes carried a sadness that seemed impossible to hide. She appreciated that he never complained, never arrived late, and never sought attention. To her, he was simply the most dependable driver the company had ever hired. Day after day, Kieran drove Celeste through crowded streets as the bright daylight reflected from towering glass buildings. He opened every door with respect, waited patiently during endless meetings, and quietly read library books while sitting in the parking lot instead of scrolling through his phone. During lunch breaks he often prepared homemade sandwiches because buying restaurant food would mean sacrificing part of his daughter's school expenses. Security guards noticed he greeted every cleaner by name and carried heavy boxes whenever someone needed help. Receptionists admired how he always smiled, even after working long hours. Nobody imagined that the humble driver had once walked those executive hallways as a child holding his grandfather's hand. Years earlier, Holt Global Industries had belonged entirely to Kieran's grandfather, a visionary businessman who believed character mattered more than wealth. Instead of raising his grandson in luxury, he insisted the young boy learn humility before inheritance. Secret legal documents had been prepared naming Kieran the sole owner of the family trust after reaching a certain age and completing conditions centered on integrity rather than business achievements. Before those conditions could be fulfilled, tragedy struck. His grandfather passed away unexpectedly while corrupt legal advisors quietly concealed the ownership documents. The company continued operating under a board that believed the rightful heir had vanished after personal hardships consumed his life. Kieran never knew the complete truth because the documents had remained hidden in confidential archives protected by dishonest executives. As months passed, Celeste slowly noticed unusual things about her driver. He possessed remarkable knowledge about the company's history, remembered details from decades-old projects, and occasionally offered thoughtful observations that solved practical problems without ever claiming credit. Once, during a visit to an aging manufacturing plant, he pointed out structural weaknesses that engineers had overlooked. Another time he suggested a more efficient delivery route that saved thousands of dollars each month. Whenever thanked, he simply smiled and said experience teaches people to notice small details. One bright afternoon, Celeste unexpectedly saw Kieran waiting outside a public school holding a lunchbox decorated with colorful stars. Maris came running toward him with laughter that echoed through the playground. He knelt beside her, fixed her untidy hair, and listened with complete attention as she excitedly described her science project. The exhausted driver transformed into the happiest father in the world. Watching from inside the car, Celeste realized genuine wealth could not be measured by expensive suits or executive offices. It was measured in moments like that, where unconditional love outweighed every hardship. Without revealing her identity, Celeste quietly arranged for Maris to receive an educational scholarship through one of the company's community programs. When Kieran discovered the anonymous support, tears filled his eyes because it meant his daughter could continue attending the school she loved without worrying about unpaid fees. He whispered a silent thank you to whoever had made such generosity possible, unaware that the woman sitting in the back seat of his car had changed his child's future. Meanwhile, tension inside Holt Global Industries continued growing. Several influential board members disliked Celeste's efforts to increase transparency throughout the company. They feared hidden financial records from previous administrations might eventually surface. During a complete legal audit ordered by the CEO, forgotten archives locked inside the oldest section of headquarters were finally opened. Dust-covered files, sealed envelopes, handwritten letters, and original ownership agreements emerged after decades of silence. Independent investigators immediately recognized something astonishing. Every legal signature pointed toward one undeniable conclusion. The company had never legally belonged to the board. It belonged entirely to one man whose identity matched the employment records of the CEO's personal driver. The emergency board meeting held the following morning became one of the most unforgettable moments in corporate history. Directors entered the conference room expecting another discussion about quarterly profits. Instead, legal experts placed authenticated documents before every seat. The room fell into absolute silence as names, signatures, and inheritance records were carefully explained. Faces turned pale. Hands trembled. Years of arrogance collapsed beneath undeniable evidence. Finally, the chairman quietly announced that the rightful owner of Holt Global Industries had been located and was already inside the building. Everyone expected a wealthy investor surrounded by lawyers and bodyguards. The conference room doors slowly opened. Standing there in the same neatly pressed driver's uniform, holding a simple cap in his hands, was Kieran Holt. He looked as uncomfortable as everyone else seemed shocked. No smile of revenge crossed his face. No anger demanded justice. There was only quiet dignity carried by a man who had survived suffering without allowing it to destroy his compassion. The legal team confirmed every document had been verified by independent courts. Ownership transferred automatically under the original trust established decades earlier. The board members who had manipulated records faced immediate investigations, while those who had honestly served the company remained protected. Celeste watched the humble father she had trusted every day become the most powerful person in the organization without changing the expression on his face. Many expected Kieran to dismiss everyone responsible for hiding the truth. Instead, he spent several days visiting every department, speaking with factory workers, cleaners, receptionists, mechanics, and security guards. He wanted to understand the company from the ground up because he had lived among ordinary people for years. He knew exactly how difficult life became when executives forgot the sacrifices made by employees keeping businesses alive. His first official decision stunned financial analysts. Rather than announcing executive bonuses or expensive expansion plans, he introduced healthcare assistance for every employee's family, educational grants for workers' children, emergency hardship funds, and leadership programs promoting people based on integrity instead of personal connections. The company cafeteria began serving free meals to staff working overtime. Maintenance teams received long-overdue equipment upgrades. Retirement benefits improved for longtime employees who had quietly devoted decades to the company. Profits remained important, but people became the heart of every decision. Celeste accepted her role with renewed admiration instead of embarrassment. She realized leadership meant recognizing greatness before titles revealed it. She apologized privately for never asking about his life, believing she had seen only a driver instead of a remarkable father carrying extraordinary burdens. Although no apology had truly been necessary, Kieran appreciated her honesty because she had always treated him with respect, even without knowing who he really was. Their partnership grew stronger, built on trust rather than hierarchy. Outside the office, life changed slowly rather than dramatically. Kieran refused to move into a mansion immediately. Maris continued attending the same school where she had built friendships through difficult years. They still enjoyed weekend picnics in the local park, still laughed over homemade pancakes every Sunday morning, and still remembered the tiny apartment that had sheltered them when hope seemed distant. Wealth transformed their opportunities, but it never replaced the values hardship had taught them. News of the extraordinary story spread across the country. People admired not the surprise inheritance, but the character of a man who had unknowingly served his own company with humility. Parents shared the story with their children as a reminder that true greatness does not announce itself through expensive clothes or powerful titles. Employees everywhere found renewed respect for co-workers whose personal struggles remained invisible behind everyday smiles. If this story has touched your heart so far, please take a moment to like this video, share it with friends and family, leave your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to Hardworking Dad. Your support allows more inspiring stories like this to reach people who may need hope today. As the first anniversary of the remarkable discovery approached, Holt Global Industries held a celebration honoring every employee rather than only executives. Instead of standing alone on stage, Kieran invited cleaners, drivers, warehouse workers, assistants, and technicians to stand beside him. Looking across thousands of grateful faces gathered under the warm afternoon sunlight, he understood that ownership meant responsibility far more than privilege. The company had always carried his family's name, but now it finally carried the values his grandfather dreamed it would represent. Special request: please comment below with the words, "Kindness always wins," if you believe that a person's character is worth more than their position or wealth. The brightest chapters of life often begin when the world underestimates someone who refuses to stop believing in honesty, hard work, and love. Kieran Holt never chased power. He simply chose to become the best father he could be, even when nobody was watching. In the end, destiny rewarded not his family name, but his unwavering heart. His journey reminds us that kindness is never wasted, humility is never weakness, and the greatest leaders are often the ones willing to serve others first. Sometimes the person holding the steering wheel is actually the one guiding everyone toward a better future, proving that the richest inheritance anyone can leave behind is not money, but compassion that changes countless lives forever.